Good morning, North America, good afternoon, Europe, and good evening to everyone joining us from India. This is US Election Watch. I'm Allister D'Souza in Washington, D.C. The headlines. Reports say Trump stayed in touch with Putin after leaving office. Harris rules out talks with Putin if elected. First Lady Jill Biden to hit the campaign trail for Harris. Jill Biden to campaign for Harris and Tim Walz in Wisconsin. Millions evacuated as Hurricane Milton threatens Florida. Milton likely to be amongst the worst storms to hit Florida. And Biden cancels his Germany trip ahead of Hurricane Milton. Now, with less than a month to go before Election Day, Trump and Harris continue to make their final pitches to voters. And this week, they're focusing on health. Trump will appear before a virtual town hall about healthcare and chronic disease. Harris plans to propose the first ever Medicare home healthcare benefits and aims to address the care needs of senior citizens. Meanwhile, the U.S. is facing yet another devastating storm, Hurricane Milton. Not good news given all that's happening recently with Hurricane Helene. Both camps are slamming each other for politicizing the aftermath of Helene. Harris has called Trump incredibly irresponsible for spreading misinformation. This as Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Harris spar over recovery efforts in the state. Now, Elon Musk, who is backing former President Donald Trump in the presidential election, has touted a $47 referral bonus to the American public. The $47 would be given for each successful referral of a registered swing state voter who signs a petition that supports free speech and the right to bear arms. This is money that would be paid by the Billionaire's Political Action Committee, or PAC. Now, even though U.S. federal law makes it a crime to pay someone to vote or to accept payment for registering to vote or for voting, it is not illegal to pay money to voters to sign a petition or to the people persuading them to sign. Now, let's get you more on this story. Joining us is NDTV's Simon Marks from Washington, D.C. Simon, how is Musk's endorsement of Trump playing out, good or bad for Trump, given all these controversial moves and statements that we've really been seeing?
Well, Allister, look, it's a transactional relationship between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. They both describe it essentially in those terms. Elon Musk in the past, as you know, had been critical of Donald Trump, even suggesting after he lost the 2020 presidential election that Donald Trump should abandon any political aspirations that he might have for the future. But how things have changed over the last 4 years. Elon Musk now owns the platform we used to call Twitter. He immediately restored Donald Trump's account on that social media platform when he took it over. Many critics of Mr. Musk's stewardship of Twitter, now called X, argue that it has amplified far-right voices in the months and years since Elon Musk invested that money to take control of the platform. And there he was on Saturday with Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, the scene of the attempted assassination against Donald Trump in July. Absolutely pledging his support for the former president's re-election bid. And now using money from a political action committee that Elon Musk largely controls to offer people $47 if they refer signatories to this petition. This is a petition that encourages voters to sign a very simple pledge. It doesn't go into any detail. It simply says, I support the First Amendment to the American Constitution. That is the one guaranteeing freedom of speech, about which Mr. Musk is very active. and secondly, supporting the Second Amendment, which is the one relating to carrying firearms, the rights that Americans have to bear arms. And this is an effort, many observers believe, by Elon Musk at least to activate people to get engaged politically, the hope being that they will then turn out and vote for Donald Trump in November.
Simon, Donald Trump, here's another question for you before we let you go. Trump is said to have been secretly speaking with Russian President Vladimir Putin as many as 7 times since leaving office. Now, this even as Trump was pressuring Republicans to block military aid, as you might remember, to Ukraine. What more do we know about this?
So these allegations are contained in a new book, and they've literally just broken. The book is written by the veteran Watergate Washington Post journalist Bob Woodward. He claims that there were multiple conversations entirely private between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. Also that while Donald Trump was president, at one point he sent COVID tests as a personal gift to the Russian leader for the Russian leader's personal use. This at a time when COVID tests were very, very difficult to come by in the earliest days of the pandemic. Now, the Trump campaign is immediately, I think, sensing the potency of these accusations, put out a statement saying that none of these made-up stories by Bob Woodward are true. They are the work of a truly demented and deranged man who suffers from a debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome. The statement goes on to call the veteran Watergate-era journalist an angry little man, clearly upset because Donald Trump is successfully suing him because of the unauthorized publishing of recordings he made previously, recordings that Donald Trump, that Bob Woodward made of his conversations with Donald Trump relating to an earlier book. You may remember it was those recordings in which we heard Donald Trump acknowledge earlier than he did publicly that COVID-19 spread through the air. He said that in a private statement to Bob Woodward that he never shared with the public. So the Trump campaign, I think, senses the potency of all of this, especially as it raises fresh allegations about the nature of the relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Simon Marks, thank you so much for giving us your insights and details here on NDTV's US Election Watch. In other news, now Kamala Harris has ruled out an one-on-one meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine unless leaders from Kyiv were involved. Harris's remarks come in an interview with CBS where she insisted that Kyiv must have a say in its future. Harris also criticized Donald Trump's approach to the Ukraine crisis, calling his policies a surrender to Russia. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is under scrutiny once again after indicating that migrants have bad genes. Now, in a recent interview, Trump has criticized Kamala Harris for her policies on the southern border and suggested that 13,000 of the migrants allowed to enter the country are murderers with bad genes. The White House press secretary slammed Trump for his hateful speech, saying President Biden and Vice President Harris would continue to forcefully reject this kind of rhetoric. Meanwhile, Trump's campaign spokesperson has said that Trump was clearly talking about murderers and not migrants. Now, as we near November 5th, the US presidential election has put a spotlight on the gender gap for 3 pivotal reasons. Kamala Harris could be the first woman president of the United States. Second, the abortion issue has resonated with women and could increase their already high turnout. And third, the election in swing states is increasingly and incredibly close, with candidates only managing razor-thin leads.
And now we know that at least 2 women, and those are only the stories we know, here in the state of Georgia, died because of a Trump abortion ban.
So we have to talk business. I always thought women liked me. I never thought I had a problem. But the fake news keeps saying women don't like me. I don't believe it.
With less than 4 weeks remaining until America votes to elect its 47th president on the 5th of November, the already intense battle between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris has yet another facet. It is quickly snowballing into a gender battle. That's correct, a war between men and women. The latest NBC poll reflects a dramatic gender divide. While men are favoring Trump by 12 points, women are endorsing Harris by 21 points. That's a stunning 33-point gap between the two contenders. While Harris began her week-long media blitz with an appearance on Call Her Daddy, the most listened-to podcast by women, Trump, on the other hand, is appearing on podcasts and alternative media platforms popular with young men. Trump's rather turbulent history with women is also in the spotlight. Apart from being found guilty of rape, the Republican candidate's many infamous comments regarding women are still being slammed across the board. Add to that the 2022 Dobbs decision, which overturned the constitutional right to abortion. This resulted in a massive outrage that led many women to the polls in 2022, preventing a Republican red wave. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, emerged as a strong voice for women's rights.
And we know in America, freedom is not to be given. It is not to be bestowed. It is ours by right. It is ours by right. And that includes the fundamental freedom of a woman to be able to make decisions about her own body and not have her government telling her what to do.
And Trump still finds himself on the receiving end. On Monday, White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre slammed Trump over the issue. She accused Trump of, quote, handicapping 3 Supreme Court justices to overturn Roe v. Wade, unquote. Trump's appeal is his aggression. He embodies a type of masculinity that resonates with young men who feel like society is holding them back. But this gender divide might just help Kamala Harris. Women typically vote in higher numbers than men, and they're overwhelmingly in her corner. Yet, with Trump often outperforming in polls, there's concern that an unseen wave of young men could swing the election in his favor. Bureau Report for NDTV World.
Let's take a closer look at the story now. We're joined by Jennifer Kelly. She's a Republican strategist. Thanks, Jennifer, for joining us here on U.S. Election Watch this morning. Jennifer, you heard that story just play out. Now, in recent elections, women have turned out more than men. In the last presidential election, we saw somewhere around 55% women vote as opposed to 44% from men. Now, given more women tend to vote more frequently, how do you see this working in favor of the Democrats? Because women generally tend to vote more Democrat.
Well, I agree that women tend to vote more Democrat. In fact, in the state of California, I know it surprises a lot of people that women, the single professional woman voter is now the #1 voting bloc in the Golden State. That's pretty stunning from 10 years ago when the family was the group you tried to target in your messaging. But look, I think Donald Trump has done something very smart here. He has tapped in to the angst of the heartland America, the working class male voter, and voter intensity matters here. You can have all the numbers on your side as Kamala Harris does in terms of ratio of men versus women registered to vote, but it's how those people turn out. It's that voter intensity that will get those voters up off of the sofa and turning out to vote. And in the case of Donald Trump, targeting the men in America, the people who feel forgotten, left behind, slapped down by the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations, certainly left behind in the transgender wars. This is a voting bloc that is ready to vote. I travel the country a lot with my radio show, All American Radio. I talk to all Americans as part of that. And people are enthused about this race, especially the working class men in the heartland of America. And so as we look at how women are going to vote, 2 years ago with the Dobbs decisions, I was concerned. I thought, Republicans that are done for the 2024 election. But Donald Trump has been able to do one thing very well, and that is he has kept the economy and also the border as the number one and number two issues, respectively. And that has allowed abortion to be down the list, number 5, number 6, number 7 on the list. And that is bad for Kamala Harris.
Right, I was just going to ask you about abortion, really, Jennifer, because after not being clear and direct on the issue for months, Trump has said he would veto a blanket abortion ban on a national abortion ban. He wants each state to decide on, really what they should do with abortion. Now, you as a white woman voter, how do you feel about this? I know you alluded to that a bit, but it still remains a fact that we are seeing multiple states enforce multiple decisions. It creates a sort of confusion, really, for women having to travel from one state to another. So you as a woman, how do you feel about that?
Well, as a self-described crazy cat lady, a single lady myself, I have to say I think it's the right decision to kick the issue back down to the states. Our country was founded on local politics being best. A decentralized government is best. Putting it as close to the people as possible in their states, I believe, is best. And the faith and family voters who I've represented for 20 plus years in my career, they are actually okay with that decision as well. I think that's how President Trump came to that conclusion to make this truly a states' rights issue.
All right, I understand that we have Simon Marks back with us, our correspondent here in Washington, D.C. Simon, let's talk a little bit about that infamous childless cat lady comment from J.D. Vance. He has since said he regrets making it. He says it was a sort of a joke, a sarcastic comment that had to do with life becoming more expensive in the U.S. His wife, too, coming out to defend him. How much are women going to really remember these comments heading into the polls November 5th?
Well, they'll certainly remember it if they subscribe to Taylor Swift's Instagram account, won't they? Because it was Taylor Swift who decided after those comments by J.D. Vance during the Democratic National Convention that she was going to, after the Democratic National Convention, rather, that she was going to endorse Kamala Harris for the presidency. And she did so in that Instagram post in which she signed off, referring to herself as a childless cat lady. I mean, I think that the debate nationally has kind of moved on from that particular phrase over the course of the last few weeks, but there's no question that it raised questions about J.D. Vance's particular outlook and underscored the reasons why Donald Trump had picked him. I mean, it really does underscore the fact that if Donald Trump wins this election, he is going to bring about a totally different type of administration than the one that he presided over from 2016 to 2020. He's not going to be making accommodations with people like Mike Pence, former vice president, or Republicans like Liz Cheney, now backing Kamala Harris for the presidency. He's going to create a government that is filled absolutely entirely with loyal supporters of his Make America Great Again movement. And J.D. Vance saw the opening there for himself as a member of the US Senate who had previously been very critical of Donald Trump to move in and essentially become the man who could be the Republican leader after Donald Trump, whatever happens, whether Trump wins the presidency or loses it. This is a party that Donald Trump is now essentially recreating in his own image.
Simon Marks and Jennifer Kelly, thank you so much for your time here on US Election Watch this morning. In other news now, Vice President Kamala Harris has sparked new hope for Democratic voters nationally, but Texas is one state that doesn't appear up for grabs. It remains a Republican bastion. Now, in 2020, for instance, Trump beat Biden in winning Texas, but one must remember that was the narrowest margin for a Republican in over 2 decades. Now, besides voting for the president on November 5th, Americans will also be voting for their leaders in the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, areas which are once again Republican strongholds in Texas. However, in one district, a suburban area north of Dallas, is where an Indian American is putting up a fight in the hopes of securing a seat in the White House, in the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, Sandeep Srivastava is Collin County businessman who migrated from India to the United States 25 years ago. He's been the Democratic Party's nominee before, but did not win. Sandeep, thank you very much for your time here. Now, in the sea of red, it's going to be a tough fight. In the previous election of the U.S. House of Representatives, you secured around 40% of votes, your Republican opponent 60%. You have a really difficult battle ahead. How's it looking?
Yeah, it is looking great. And as you know, when I started my last election, I was 35 points behind the Republican opponents. But with the help of the people and working class, and I could secure 40% of the vote. And this time, as per Cook's report, we are just 8 to 10% behind. And 8 to 10% with this all kind of enthusiasm and with the Kamala Harris on the ticket and women rights and gun violence, everything is there in people's mind. And we are going to turn Texas. You will see a lot of surprises in Texas this time.
Okay, now let's take a look at some of the comments coming from your opponent, your Republican opponent. Congressman Keith Self has a post on X, for example, saying that under President Donald Trump, we had no wars in the Middle East and our enemies feared us, is what he's saying. He's also saying that under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we are bracing for World War III. How worried are you really that the world is on the brink?
See, their campaign is based on lies. They just lie. And if you see in last few presidency, all wars have been taken under Republican presidents, whether it's George W. Bush or his dad or whatever. And Democrats, we are not in favor of wars. We always support the dialogues. And we will never support any kind of a war. And this is all lies. Nobody is going on Third World War. No country can afford it. And this is our take on the
I think the
war.
worry is about the Middle East, Sandeep, also because of the fact that we've had so many months and over a year of fighting in the Middle East since that attack on Gaza. We've seen no peace as of yet. Kamala Harris, if she wins, has to take over that conflict. So the worry is that the Democrats have not been able to control things thus far and may not be able to in the coming months as well.
Yeah, that is why we need Congress control this time. Because whatever President Biden tries to do, it is blocked in the Congress, like my opponent and other Republicans. So we need that gain on the Congress control. And once we have control on the Congress and White House with Kamala Harris, we can bring Israel and Palestine on the table because we support two-state solution. And everything we want to be solved on the table with the dialogues, not with the bullets.
Sandeep Srivastava there, who's hoping to win a seat in the U.S. Congress, joining us from Texas. Thank you very much for your time. In other news now, Vice President Kamala Harris has hit back at Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders' comments that Harris doesn't have anything keeping her humble because she doesn't have any biological children. NDTV's Parmeshwar Bawa has more on this battle of words.
Kamala Harris is punching back at Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders for suggesting that she is not humble because she does not have biological children. In an interview on the Call Her Daddy podcast, Kamala Harris said, "I don't think she understands that many women aren't focused on being humble." This 40-minute conversation also covered Harris's upbringing, the rollback of abortion rights, the high cost of housing, besides Republican attacks on childless cat ladies. This came after Sanders, a former deputy press secretary under Trump, stated at a rally that her kids keep her humble and criticized Kamala Harris for not having the same grounding. Kamala Harris emphasized the importance of women supporting one another while noting that she is a stepmother to her husband, Doug Emhoff's 2 kids, saying we have family by blood and family by love, and I have both. This podcast comes as Harris begins a media blitz amid political media criticism that she has not subjected herself to one-on-one interviews since she secured the Democratic nomination, with the exception of Oprah Winfrey. Experts highlight that the media landscape in 2024 is already showing how new creators are shaping the way we consume news. But as these non-traditional outlets gain traction, they are capturing the attention of younger millennials and Gen Z, who will soon represent the largest portion of the electorate in the United States. Yet, there are many who assert that this podcast interview is not a substitute for more policy-focused conversations with legacy outlets that still have the sway over large segments of the electorate in the United States. Parmeshwar Bava for NDTV World.
That's it for now on US Election Watch. I'm Allister in Washington, D.C.